A cold wind blew across the scorched plains south of the Trident, a reminder that the winter's chill still lingered in Westeros despite the sun's half-hearted attempt to banish it. Jaime Lannister pressed his gloved hand over the stump where his right hand had once been, an old habit that never truly left him, especially when a biting wind coursed through the hills. It did not pain him the way it once had, but the echoes of memory seemed to ache more than muscle ever would. He rode alone but for a few loyal knights who had not abandoned him after he departed the northern cause. He remembered the snow falling on King's Landing only a short time ago, a phenomenon he had once claimed he would never live to see. Westeros was changing, winter had come, the dead had been defeated at Winterfell, and so many old alliances had twisted into new shapes. But that final shift, the final conflict, was still to come. Cersei waited in King's Landing, holding fast to her throne, having spurned all notion of alliances and reason. Euron Greyjoy roamed the seas and the coastline around the capital like a lurking shark, his iron fleet an iron cage around Cersei's stronghold. Far to the north, Daenerys Targaryen and her surviving armies prepared to march south. The realm had fractured, the wars layering one atop the other, never ceasing to let them rest. Yet it was Euron who had become the hinge on which all turned, at least in Jaime's mind. The man's arrogance knew no bounds, his violent temperament a direct threat to all of Westeros. Jaime was certain that Euron Greyjoy would burn the entirety of the Seven Kingdoms if only to make a name for himself. And his sister, the woman Jaime had once believed he loved more deeply than anything, had thrown herself at Euron with a desperation Jaime recognized in her all too well. She would cling to any power that allowed her to maintain her seat on the Iron Throne. Once, Jaime had believed he was that power for her. But she had grown distant and he had grown restless. The truths they once hid from the world had come crashing upon them like waves. The woman he had pledged himself to, protected, had become increasingly cruel, distant, and reckless, while he had discovered corners of his own soul that yearned for atonement. He guided his horse carefully down the winding path that led between rolling hills. A small river churned to his left, half frozen but still rushing with the slow might of winter's end. The knights who rode beside him, Ser Kennos, Ser Vadrian, and a handful of other quiet men who still felt some loyalty to the Lannister name, were men of good heart, or as good as Jaime dared to hope for in these times. He had chosen each with care, wanting no tongues wagging in Cersei's ear that Jaime was near. He needed to approach King's Landing quietly. If the rumors were true, Euron had anchored his iron fleet off Blackwater Bay, controlling the city's seaward approach. No outriders or messengers had been permitted to pass. But that would mean, if he were fortunate, he could face Euron before he slipped into the Red Keep, if Euron even allowed Jaime entry at all. Jaime clenched his jaw, remembering the letter he had received before leaving the north. A slip of parchment delivered by a ragged messenger, sealed with the wax of the crown but penned in an unsteady, crabbed hand. It had read, "The false alliance is failing. Euron's hold is tighter than ever. Save Cersei from him. Or kill them both." Jaime could almost picture Qyburn's skeletal grin behind those words, or perhaps it was Varys, though Varys had retreated into Daenerys' service by all accounts. The alliances at court were fraying, uncertain. Euron had effectively replaced Jaime in Cersei's bed and at her side, praising himself with every breath. That image still haunted him. He recalled the day Cersei had chosen Euron's help, though she pretended it was a political necessity. Jaime knew better. Perhaps it was more than politics. Euron's impulsive violence appealed to Cersei's darker side, that part of her which had once insisted on burning entire cities if they so much as threatened her children. Jaime had done unspeakable things for her, and once he might have done more. But no longer. The spark of devotion he once felt for Cersei had dimmed. He still cared, perhaps even loved her, but something else had lodged itself in his chest. The conscience Brienne of Tarth had awakened, and his own quiet desire to redeem himself from the shadows of his past. That desire would never entirely extinguish the complicated love he felt for Cersei, but he would do anything to stop Euron from unleashing a final wave of destruction upon the realm. Jaime's company reached the crest of a hill and paused. Down below lay a modest encampment, likely belonging to Cersei's outriders or sellswords who had sold their services to the crown. He surveyed the black tents and saw the golden lion flags. If they were Lannister banners, he might receive a measure of respect still. But respect was not his chief aim. He needed to slip near enough to find Euron Greyjoy. A direct assault on the Iron Fleet was madness, but perhaps luck would favor him. Euron might be at that camp, disembarked with a retinue of his Ironborn to meet with some of Cersei's lieutenants. Perhaps Jaime could approach under the guise of a returning Lannister hero. That would be a bitter farce indeed, but if it brought him in close contact with Euron, he would seize any opportunity. If the moment arrived to kill the man, Jaime would take it, no hesitation. He felt the weight of that truth like a boulder against his ribs. He had once killed Aerys Targaryen to protect King's Landing from being razed by wildfire. Now he would kill Euron Greyjoy to keep Cersei from sinking the realm into unending chaos. Despite all the blood on his hands, Jaime recognized that the realm might be better off without men like Euron. But would he survive it? He steeled himself. He was the King Lair. If he had to be the Greyjoy's lair too, so be it. Ser Kennos rode up beside him. "My lord," he said quietly, silver hair framing a weathered face. "Shall we approach openly, or try to skirt around them?" Jaime inhaled, the cold air stinging his lungs. "We'll approach. If they are loyal to House Lannister, they'll let us pass at least." He attempted a small smile, but it felt grim. "If they're not, we'll adapt. Keep your swords close." They descended the slope at a careful pace. The sunlight seemed watery, as though it might vanish behind a gray cloud at any moment. Winter's gloom never fully lifted. As they drew closer, Jaime saw a line of men stepping out from the edge of the encampment. Their armor bore the marks of the Golden Company, the Sellsword outfit that Cersei had contracted from Essos. Their commander must have dispatched a contingent to guard this crossroad camp. Immediately, a handful of these Sellswords raised crossbows in a threatening arc. One tall captain, wearing black and gold over a ringmail shirt, stepped forward. "Halt! Who goes there?" he called. Jaime raised his left hand, the gold swirl of his right hand's missing glove strapped to the pommel of his sword. "I am Jaime Lannister, returning from the north under the orders of Queen Cersei Lannister." The lie tasted bitter, but it was close enough to what they might believe. "I have a retinue of loyal knights. We would speak with my sister." A murmur ran through the ranks. News of Jaime's departure from King's Landing had spread, along with the rumor he had turned against the queen. Perhaps they thought him a deserter. The captain frowned, suspicious. "We'd heard you turned traitor, sir. You were last known to be riding north to join enemies of the crown." "I did my duty to fight the dead. They were everyone's enemies," Jaime replied in as firm a tone as he could manage. "The threat beyond the wall was real, and I pledged to defend the living." "That threat has been ended." The men whispered among themselves. Jaime forced a commanding expression, sitting tall in his saddle. Kennos and the knights around him remained still, their presence neither menacing nor overly humble. At last, the captain stepped forward. "Your presence here will need to be reported. You'll have to submit to a guard watch. We can't allow you to roam freely. Queen Cersei has decreed you are to be brought before her in King's Landing, if found, alive or not." His tone was cold, but not without a flicker of caution. "Better for you if you come quietly." Jaime nodded, giving the barest shrug of acceptance. "I have no intention of fighting my own house. If you insist, let me speak with whoever commands you and we can arrange my escort." The captain gestured for them to follow. Behind him, crossbowmen lowered their weapons, though not without reluctance. Jaime suppressed a scowl. This was far from ideal. The entire reason he had come quietly was to avoid rousing an army around him. But if Euron was here, Jaime would prefer to know about it sooner rather than later. If Euron was not, perhaps these men could shed light on the pirates' whereabouts. 1,000 shifting possibilities swarmed in Jaime's mind, yet he gave no outward sign of turmoil. He was practiced in hiding his emotions behind the cold veneer of a Lannister knight. They rode into the camp. The smell of boiled cabbage, damp straw, and sweat mingled in the still winter air. Tents stood in neat rows, the Golden Company's disciplined nature evident in the orderliness. Men in black gold surcoats paused their duties to stare at Jaime and his entourage. A few recognized the shimmering gold of his hair, and a hush followed him as though he were a wraith riding through their midst. In some corners, men parted to reveal a handful of Ironborn, Euron's men, by their salt-stained leathers and the damp, brine-scented hair. They stared with open hostility. Jaime could feel the weight of their gaze as he dismounted in front of the largest tent in the camp. When he stepped onto the muddy ground, Jaime squared his shoulders. He wore his armor, a breastplate polished to a high sheen, black leather beneath. A Lannister lion's head adorned the buckles at his belt. His sword, a functional blade replaced after he'd surrendered Widow's Wail, hung at his left side. He could still feel the ghost of his missing hand, the reflex to rest it on the hilt. The sight of the golden clamp at his right wrist often unsettled men who expected him to be less formidable. He tried to use that to his advantage. A man stepped from the tent, wearing the filigreed armor of an officer in the Golden Company. On his breastplate gleamed the imprint of a skull with golden eyes, the Sellsword Company's sigil. His hair was cut short, and his skin bore the bronze hue of a summer far away, no doubt Essos born. He examined Jaime with open curiosity, but none of the reverence the small folk might have shown a Lannister. The Sellsword's loyalty lay in gold, not in name or legacy. "You are Jaime Lannister," the officer said. "I am Captain Rorion of the Golden Company. You claim you ride under the Queen's orders." "I do," Jaime answered. "I left King's Landing to fight the war against the dead. That war is done. Now I return to fulfill my oath to the Queen." Captain Rorion looked thoughtful, though Jaime couldn't read his face fully. Euron Greyjoy made it clear that those who abandon the Queen are not to be admitted to her presence without considerable caution. Yet the Queen never issued an order to kill you on sight, only to take you in. Jaime's jaw tightened. Euron Greyjoy isn't the Queen. He is but her ally for the moment. I stand by the words of Cersei Lannister, not her dogs. He paused, measured his next words. "Is he here?" There was a flicker in Rorion's gaze. "He is. The Iron Fleet is anchored in Blackwater Bay, but Lord Greyjoy sailed upriver with a modest force to check on our deployments." The officer gestured to the men around. "He's taken one of our tents for his meeting with the local lords, or what's left of them. You'll be pleased to know he has no love for you either." The mention of Euron's presence twisted something in Jaime's gut. So the man was here within a few hundred yards. And so was Jaime's chance. He focused on keeping his face neutral. "I'll speak with him." Before Rorion could protest, Jaime added, "If he is so concerned about who left the Queen's side, let him question me directly. I have nothing to hide." Rorion studied Jaime's expression, then gave a slow nod. "Very well, but my men will escort you. Do not draw your sword or you'll have more than crossbows aimed at your heart." Jaime offered no complaint. Every cell in his body was thrumming now. This was the moment, but he had to maintain calm or he wouldn't get within arm's reach of that wretched pirate. He just had to hope he could get close enough to do what was needed. He glanced at his retinue. "Stay back," he told them. "If they allow it, make yourselves comfortable near the horses. Ensure they are fed and watered." Ser Canos nodded grimly but did not speak. They all knew what Jaime's real purpose was. And if Jaime never returned from the pirate's tent, they would slip away or perhaps they'd try to avenge him. That was a question for later. Jaime followed Rorion, flanked by a handful of Sellswords, each armed with a short spear or crossbow. They walked through the camp, passing supply wagons and small fires around which a few men hunched, warming their hands. The occasional spatter of horse hooves in the mud was the only sharp sound beyond murmured conversation. At last, they reached a grander tent near the center, far bigger than the rest. Black canvas with the sigil of the Golden Company at the corners, though it was no doubt chosen to suit Euron's dramatic tastes. 2 Ironborn guards stood at the tent flaps, scowling at Jaime. One had his hair braided in a thick rope, the other wore a leather patch over his left eye. Rorion made to announce Jaime. "Lord Greyjoy, Jaime Lannister is..." A voice boomed from inside, cutting him off. "Send him in, then. Let's see if he's grown a spine or if he left it in the north with those freakish undead." Euron Greyjoy's tone was unmistakable. Jaime felt that old hatred surge. He stepped past the guards, ignoring the smell of fish oil that seemed to cling to them. The interior of the tent was surprisingly spacious. Torches lit the dim recesses, and a large wooden table occupied the center, strewn with maps and parchments. A few chairs made of sturdy oak ringed it. Euron Greyjoy himself stood at the far side, leaning over a spread of documents. He looked up with a grin that showed too many teeth. "Jaime Lannister," Euron crowed, swiping a piece of parchment aside. "The North turned you out so quickly, did they? Or maybe you came crawling back to see what a real man does in a war." Jaime said nothing at first, studying the man. Euron wore his usual black leather coat, embroidered with gold krakens along the sleeves. His dark hair gleamed with a faint hint of oil, and his eyes were bright with a savage amusement. He had the look of someone who believed he was untouchable, an unfortunate arrogance that was not entirely unwarranted, considering how effectively he had thus far outmaneuvered many of his enemies. "I came to speak with my sister," Jaime said, his voice steady. "I have news from the north. The dead are defeated. Daenerys Targaryen's army is battered, but not broken. They'll move south soon." Euron smirked. "Oh, I know all about the Dragon Queen's intentions. We have scouts watching the roads. She can burn a few fields if she likes, but King's Landing is well defended. My Iron Fleet is unstoppable and the Golden Company is itching for the next war. His grin stretched wider. But I doubt you came to brief me on her movements. That's Qyburn's job, or Varys's, or whatever spymaster skulks in shadows. So what do you want, Kingslayer? The insult in that moniker was obvious. Jaime kept his eyes on Euron's face, refusing to let the mention of Kingslayer unbalance him. I want to see the Queen. Euron's grin sharpened. My sweet Queen is busy right now, seeing to matters of state in the capital. She entrusted me with cleaning up these outlying camps, making sure our men are ready for a major clash. She also told me to ensure that if you show your face, we bring you before her in chains if necessary. He shrugged. But perhaps you'll beg nicely and I'll reconsider. Jaime's temper flared, but he clamped it down. A direct challenge might get him skewered on the spot by the half-dozen Ironborn lurking around the edges of the tent. He saw them now, their silhouettes barely visible in the torchlight, some seated, some standing. Not the friendliest audience. He needed to be cunning to wait for the right moment. Why would she want me in chains? Jaime asked, feigning ignorance. I left to fight a war for the living, something she had promised to do herself. If she reneged on that promise, that's her shame. Not mine. Euron laughed, a harsh bark. You Lannisters can be so tedious. Always jabbering about oaths and bargains. The Queen has no shame about leaving the North to fight on its own, I assure you. She knew the living would triumph or perish, but one way or another, her cause would remain strong. As for you, it's possible that your sister has grown tired of your moral scruples. He leaned forward, resting his fists on the table. You're yesterday's news, Sir Jaime. A broken shell of a knight with half a hand and even less sense. Jaime took a measured breath. Queen Cersei is many things, but she doesn't need your help to speak her mind, he said softly. I'll go to her. Stand in my way if you like. Euron made a mock solemn face. Oh, I certainly will. But we can be civilized about this. I'll just have you escorted in chains once we're back in King's Landing. Then you can talk your pretty nonsense to Cersei directly. He cocked his head. Perhaps she'll even throw you in a cell to rot, or maybe she'll let you scurry around the Red Keep. Who knows? She changes her mind faster than a storm at sea. But me, I'd relish seeing you whipped a bit first. For old time's sake. A faint prickle of dread worked its way through Jaime. He realized Euron's men had subtly spread out to encircle him. Rorion stood near the tent flap, watching with an inscrutable expression. Jaime's gaze darted to the corners, counting 4, 5, 6 Ironborn, plus Euron, plus the Sellswords who might side with Euron if violence erupted. Jaime was skilled, but he wasn't a fool. Fighting them all in close quarters was nearly impossible. He had to find a more private moment. But Euron's words hammered at him, talk of chains, whips, humiliations. Jaime also recalled that he was hardly in top fighting form with one hand. Still, he had come this far. He forced a chuckle. You always did enjoy cruelty, Greyjoy. Is that how you won over the Queen? By bragging about your capacity for torment. A flicker of anger coursed across Euron's features, but he covered it with a grin. I won her over with, well, let's just say it wasn't words alone. He laughed uproariously as though he'd told a grand joke, while Jaime felt a bitter taste flood his mouth. Ah, don't pout, Kingslayer. Did you think you were the only man who could share her bed? You left, so I arrived. That's how the game is played. Jaime's left hand clenched near his sword hilt. Carefully, he resisted the urge to lunge. He needed to bait Euron away from the watchful eyes. If Euron let them speak alone, maybe Jaime could kill him quickly. But how to manage that? He thought fast. Euron was proud, dangerously so, and believed himself to be the most formidable fighter in any room. Perhaps Jaime could. Use that. You boast so freely, Jaime said, letting his voice brim with condescension. Yet you hide behind your men right now. If you were so confident, you'd send them away and let us speak man to man. Euron raised an eyebrow, a grin tugging at his mouth. Man to man? With the likes of you? He gave an overly dramatic sigh. Oh, Jaime, I almost pity you. But sure, let's send them away. Then when I cut you to ribbons, no one can say I needed help to do it. He turned to the Ironborn lurking in the corners. Out, the lot of you. Stand guard outside. One of them, a thick-necked brute, opened his mouth to protest. Euron's glare shut him up. Outside, Euron repeated, Leave me to chat with this golden fool in private. The men cast suspicious glances but obeyed. The Sellswords followed suit, though Rorion paused to offer Euron a questioning look. The captain might have found it ill-advised. But Euron waved him away, clearly relishing the notion of dominating Jaime alone. Moments later, Jaime and Euron stood in the tent, faced off across the table covered in maps. Outside, muffled sounds of stirring men and the night wind could be heard. Torchlight flickered across the two men, painting them with wavering shadows. Euron chuckled as he began to circle the table, eyes never leaving Jaime. "You have some nerve. Challenging me to a private discussion when you can't even properly wield a sword. A shame about that hand. I almost wish you still had it so I could chop it off myself." Jaime tightened his grip on his sword hilt. His mouth felt dry and his mind spun with the realization that this was it. If he failed now, Euron's men would string him up or he'd be dragged back to Cersei in chains. There was no turning back. "Perhaps you'll find me more than capable with one hand," Jaime said, stepping away from the table to a clearer area of floor. He drew his sword in a single smooth motion. "Why don't we see how you fare?" Euron's grin spread. "Oh, I like this. You want a duel? The old-fashioned way. One man enters, one man leaves. Fine by me." He drew his own cutlass, the iron glinting dully in the torchlight. "They'll hear your screams outside, though. I'll have to come up with a convincing lie about how you tried to stab me in the back. Maybe I'll cut off your other hand for good measure." Jaime said nothing, only shifted his weight to a balanced stance. He had spent months training himself to fight left-handed. He was not the swordsman he used to be, that was undeniable. But he'd had to adapt, to learn new stances, new ways to parry and thrust. He told himself he had a chance. Euron might be strong and vicious, but Jaime had once been hailed as one of the best knights in the realm. Euron closed the distance swiftly, coming in with a diagonal slash aimed at Jaime's left side. Jaime blocked it, the impact jarring his arm. The cutlass scraped against his sword and Euron twisted with surprising agility, hooking the blade around to strike again. Jaime spun away, managing to deflect, but nearly lost his footing on a patch of damp ground. The momentum carried them around the center table where a map of Westeros was pinned in place with a dagger. Torchlight danced on Euron's grin. "You see," Euron teased, stepping sideways with cat-like grace. "You're slow, Kingslayer. You can't match me anymore." Jaime ignored the jibe. He advanced this time, surprising Euron with a quick thrust at his midsection. Euron leaped back, pivoting. Jaime pressed, launching a rapid series of jabs that forced Euron to move. Euron's laughter turned to a concentrated scowl as he realized Jaime was neither as slow nor as clumsy as he had assumed. Blade met blade, the ring of steel echoing inside the tent. Euron counterattacked, feinting high then slamming a real thrust low. Jaime brought his golden hand forward, letting the metal clamp catch part of the blow. A jolt of pain shot up his arm, but it saved him from a gut wound. They circled again, breath coming faster now. Euron chuckled anew, though there was a hint of frustration in the sound. "You're better than I expected," he admitted. "But you'll still die." "We'll see," Jaime muttered. He lunged. Their blades locked and they strained against each other, faces inches apart. Jaime could see the manic gleam in Euron's eyes, smell the salt and sweat on his skin. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Jaime shoved with his stump, slamming the metal clamp into Euron's ribs. Euron grimaced but twisted free, elbowing Jaime in the side of the head in retaliation. Jaime stumbled back, vision swimming. Euron came in fast, slashing downward. Jaime barely had time to raise his sword. The force of the blow knocked him to a knee, sword arm trembling. Euron laughed, pressing down. "Not so high and mighty now, are you?" He twisted the blade, trying to wrench Jaime's sword from his grasp. With a desperate burst of effort, Jaime shoved upward, throwing Euron's balance off. He surged to his feet, smashing his golden hand into Euron's jaw. The pirate staggered, spitting blood. Jaime followed up with a slash aimed at Euron's shoulder, but Euron parried. Steel sparks flew in the torchlight. Euron retaliated with a vicious swipe that cut across Jaime's left forearm. Pain flared, hot and immediate. Jaime hissed, stepping back, and felt warm blood trickling under his armor's bracer. Euron pressed the advantage, grinning madly despite the blood staining his lips. "I'll mount your head on the prow of my ship," he snarled, driving Jaime back with rapid strikes. Jaime retreated, parrying as best he could, searching for an opening. His wound throbbed, and each clash of steel jarred his injured arm. Outside the tent, faint shouts indicated the men were aware of a fight. They might burst in at any second. Jaime realized time was short. He had to finish this quickly or not at all. Euron feinted a blow to Jaime's right, then pivoted left with a cunning slash. Jaime's reaction came a fraction too late. The cutlass slashed through the leather at Jaime's torso, slicing flesh. He gasped as pain rocked him, but he pressed forward anyway, ignoring the stab of agony. He stepped inside Euron's guard, hooking the pirate's cutlass with his crossguard. With a twist, he knocked the cutlass momentarily aside. That was his chance. He lunged forward with all his strength, driving his blade into Euron's side, right above the hip. Euron's eyes went wide, a choked sound escaping him. Jaime felt his sword bite through cloth and flesh, felt the jolt of hitting bone. He wrenched the blade free just as Euron hammered a fist into Jaime's jaw. Jaime staggered back, spitting blood. His ears rang and his head swam. Euron fell to one knee, clutching the deep wound but refusing to drop his blade. The man's face contorted with pain and rage. "You," Euron hissed, "you worthless cripple." He tried to rise. Jaime advanced, sword at the ready, vision blurred around the edges. In that moment, Euron flung a dagger that had been hidden behind his back. Jaime barely managed to turn, it caught him near the shoulder, burning pain as the blade stuck. Jaime gritted his teeth and let out a strangled cry. But he pressed on. He knocked Euron's hand aside, ignoring another scrape that sliced across his gauntlet and drove his sword downward into Euron's chest with a final thrust. A wet gasp tore from Euron's throat. Blood bubbled on his lips. His eyes widened in shock as if he never truly believed he could lose. Jaime met that gaze, breathing raggedly. In a strange hush, Euron's cutlass clattered to the ground. Jaime's sword remained in the pirate's chest and Euron's body sagged around it, dropping heavily to the tent floor. Silence pressed in. Jaime stood there, blood staining his armor, dripping from his wounded arm and torso. His breath rattled in his lungs. He felt dizzy, as though the world had tilted under his feet. Dead. Euron Greyjoy was dead. For a heartbeat, Jaime wanted to collapse. But he forced himself to remain standing. The hush broke as the tent flap was ripped open. Ironborn, Golden Company men, and Jaime's knights poured in, weapons drawn. They saw Euron's bleeding body at Jaime's feet, saw Jaime still upright, sword buried in the dead man's chest. Shouts erupted, some men cursing, others gasping in shock. The Ironborn, faces contorted with fury, started to surge forward. Sellswords barked conflicting orders. Jaime's knights advanced to protect him. Amid the chaos, Captain Rorion moved, pushing aside a furious Ironborn warrior. He knelt, pressed his fingers to Euron's neck, and then glanced up, grim and pale. "He's gone," Rorion said, rising slowly. "You killed Euron Greyjoy." "He gave me no choice," Jaime said hoarsely, panting. The dagger in his shoulder burned and blood trickled from the slash across his torso. "He tried to kill me. I only defended myself." The Ironborn clamored, brandishing axes and daggers, howling for Jaime's blood. One lunged, but a Golden Company Sellsword seized the man. "Stand down," Rorion commanded, eyeing them. "If you kill Jaime Lannister, you may as well slit your own throats. The Queen will not stand for unbridled chaos in her ranks." He turned back to Jaime. "Still, you must answer for this. Euron was the Queen's ally." The word dripped with irony. "She will want explanations." "I'll explain," Jaime said, voice tight from pain. "But not here." His vision swam again, and he thought he might topple over at any moment. Kenos rushed to his side, helping brace him. Rorion assessed Jaime's injuries. "There was no hiding them. We'll send a messenger to King's Landing. We need to move. The men here won't remain calm. Greyjoy's followers will want vengeance." Ser Kenos's voice rang with quiet urgency. "We must get Lord Jaime to a maester, or at least to a safe place where his wounds can be bound." Rorion nodded curtly. "And I'll do what I can to keep the Golden Company from turning on you. Euron had gold, but it was the Queen who hired us, not him." He glanced back down at the still corpse. "He died as he lived, full of pride and violence. Mark my words, though, the city is in turmoil. The Queen will not receive this news calmly. She might reward you or she might kill you for daring to take her victory away. We had orders to let him do as he pleased." Jaime sagged against Kenos, each breath a struggle. His world dimmed around the edges, the howls of anger from the Ironborn blending with the clamor of the Sellswords. "It had to be done," he rasped. "He would have destroyed everything. I had to stop him." Rorion studied him with a hint of respect or perhaps pity. "Then let's see if you can survive long enough to tell the Queen why you did her a service by murdering her paramour." He turned to his men. "Get a litter for Ser Jaime." We marched toward the city at first light. Outside, dusk had turned to full night and the wind whipped across the plain. Jaime's knights closed around him, leading him away from the tent of death. Half delirious from blood loss, he glanced back to see Euron's body still lying where it had fallen, a black puddle forming beneath it. Jaime had killed kings and outraged nobles before. This was one more life on his already stained soul. Euron Greyjoy's final expression might haunt him, or it might not. Jaime's regrets were numerous, but in that instant he felt not a single one. Euron's death was necessary. He whispered a quiet prayer, whether to the Seven or to some unnamed god, that this would break the iron stranglehold on the Queen's mind. Or if not, at least free the realm from the chaos Euron would have unleashed. He could scarcely focus on the path as Kennos and the others guided him through the camp. Shouts and curses still rang out, but the Golden Company was stepping in to restore a semblance of order. The best the Ironborn could do was spit and threaten. Many began packing their gear, uncertain whether to remain loyal to a dead leader's cause or to retreat to the Iron Fleet's ships. Jaime heard mention that some Ironborn might race back to the fleet to spread the news. No doubt King's Landing would reverberate with shock soon enough. A makeshift maester, a young man in worn robes who claimed to have studied at the Citadel, cleaned and stitched Jaime's wounds by the light of a flickering lantern. Jaime bit down on a leather strap to keep from crying out as the needle worked through his flesh. Blood dribbled onto the ground. Ser Kennos stood guard, ensuring the Ironborn didn't try to slip in for vengeance. Each pulse of pain threatened to drag Jaime into darkness. He wondered if he would even survive the journey to King's Landing. The dagger to his shoulder was one thing, but the slash across his torso could prove fatal if infection set in. The would-be maester poured a pungent ointment on the stitches, and Jaime nearly jolted off the stool. A wave of dizziness flooded him, and he found himself blinking rapidly to stay awake. He recalled the nights in Harrenhal, where Brienne tended his fever after his hand was cut off. He remembered her quiet presence, her unwavering sense of honor, how it clashed with everything he had been taught. A strange longing filled him. He forced himself to push it aside. That was behind him now, or perhaps it wasn't. He couldn't know. For the moment, he simply tried not to slump sideways. When the stitching was done, the maester wrapped clean bandages around Jaime's shoulder and torso. "You'll need rest, my lord," the man murmured. "Plenty of fluids, and try not to move too vigorously." Jaime had to bark a weak laugh at the absurdity of that command. "A pity I don't have that luxury." He nodded in thanks, though, and the man dipped his head. Jaime sank onto a bedroll in one of the lesser tents. No one had dared to place him in Euron's tent. That space was now a crime scene, so to speak, with Euron's men venting their rage. Jaime was grateful for the meager privacy he had, though the constant scuffle and threats just outside reminded him how temporary it was. Ser Kennos bent low, voice tense. "The Ironborn may not wait until we leave at dawn. We need to keep a watch." Jaime nodded, swallowing back a groan. "Set a guard, then." Before Kennos could answer, Rorion appeared at the tent flap, arms folded. "The Ironborn are furious, but with Euron dead, they lack a clear commander. A few might try to cut your throat tonight, but we'll keep them at bay. My men know the Queen's gold is worth more than Euron's corpse. You'll be safe enough until we reach King's Landing." Jaime's eyelids felt heavy. "Thank you, Captain." His voice sounded hoarse in his ears. "In the morning, if I can stand, we'll ride. But if the Queen expects me to come in chains, that's something else." Rorion tilted his head. "You've done a service for some, but you've upset the balance. I'm not sure how the Queen will react. Whether you wish to come in chains or not, I'll not stop you from riding freely. My men will accompany you as an escort, not as jailers." He paused. "I find you more honorable than most Lannisters I've met, Ser Jaime. I wish you luck with the Queen's temper." With that, he stepped out. Ser Kennos lingered a moment, then said, "Rest, my lord. I'll stand watch myself." Jaime's eyes drifted shut, and though pain gnawed at him, exhaustion was stronger. Sleep claimed him in fits. Each time he half woke, he saw flickers of torchlight outside and heard distant arguments. When morning finally arrived, a gray, cold dawn, he roused himself with effort. His body felt like lead, but the stitches held. The pain was a dull roar, not the sharp agony of the night before. Outside, the camp was a swirl of movement. Golden Company troops were breaking tents, preparing wagons. The Ironborn were in disarray, some packing to return to the ships, others skulking around and glowering. Jaime forced himself upright, accepted a wooden cup of water from Kennos, and drank deeply. Blood still stained the bandages around his torso, but the bleeding had slowed. It was time to face the consequences. They had a small train of wagons and horses ready. Jaime insisted on mounting a horse rather than being carried in a litter. Ser Kennos helped him settle into the saddle, mindful of his wounds. Rorion and a small company of Sellswords formed up around them, perhaps 24 strong, presumably to discourage any Ironborn attempt at revenge. Jaime could feel the silent tension in the air as they made their way out of the camp. The men parted to let them pass. Some spat on the ground, cursing under their breath. Jaime set his jaw and tried to keep his seat steady. He would not collapse in front of them. As they departed, the sky overhead threatened snow or rain. Winter was not yet done with Westeros. In the distance, Jaime could see the faint outline of King's Landing's walls. That was where he would face Cersei. He struggled to imagine what she would say, how she might react to news that her favored pirate was dead by Jaime's hand. Would she weep for Euron or rage at Jaime? Or would she quietly be relieved that Euron's dangerous presence was removed from her side? Hard to say. Cersei was unpredictable. Once, Jaime believed he understood her perfectly. Now, after so much betrayal, heartbreak, and transformation, he felt like he hardly knew her at all. Still, he pressed on, leading his small retinue with Rorion at his flank. The wind tugged at his cloak, and the gloom of the morning matched his inner turmoil. Killing Euron Greyjoy was only the first step. Now came the far more treacherous challenge, convincing Cersei that this death served her cause, or, at the very least, that she should spare Jaime's life. The ground sloped downward and the main road began to take shape beneath them, winding toward the capital. Jaime wondered if Daenerys Targaryen's armies marched from the north at this very moment. Soon, the city might be besieged. All that warfare, all that blood, and for what? A throne that had consumed countless lives already, including perhaps the soul of the very woman who sat upon it. Jaime's side ached, and he grasped the reins in his left hand, breathing through the pain. He could not afford to pass out now. Too much depended on him living long enough to see this through. And so, beneath the sullen sky and the watchful eyes of men he could not fully trust, Jaime Lannister rode toward King's Landing, the memory of Euron Greyjoy's final gaze still fresh in his mind. He had done what he believed was right, or at least what was necessary, once again stepping into the role of necessary killer as he had decades ago with the Mad King. Whether this act would destroy him or save the realm remained to be seen. But at least, for one fleeting moment, Jaime believed he had struck down a monster who might have drowned the world in cruelty. For once, the Kingslayer might have spared the realm another madness. He only hoped the price he would pay would not be too high. Jaime woke to the sound of muffled voices outside the door. His entire body throbbed, the pain in his side and shoulder a pulsing reminder that he was no longer the invincible knight of his youth. He blinked at the dim morning light peeking around the heavy drapes. The red keep stones seemed even colder now, as though the building itself had turned against him. He sat up, wrestling a moment with the blanket that had tangled around his legs, then brushed a hand over his face. Stubble rasped beneath his fingers. He had been too exhausted the previous day to think of grooming. He found it grimly amusing that he cared about such things, given how precarious his position was. Outside, the voices rose and there was a sharp rap on the door. It opened before he could speak. A different guard from the night bef. Or strode in wearing the Lannister crimson and an impatient scowl. He bowed stiffly, though the motion held more show than genuine respect. "The Queen summons you," the guard announced. "Dress and come at once." Jaime pushed himself off the bed, pain flaring in his torso. He spotted his breastplate, set aside after the maester's ministrations, and decided he would try to wear it. The guard watched him with an impassive expression, offering no help. Jaime suppressed a grunt as he eased the armor over his quilted doublet. He could not fully buckle it with one hand, so he had to contort his left arm at an awkward angle, hissing at the strain it placed on his shoulder wound. At length, he managed to fasten enough straps that the breastplate stayed in place. It was not perfectly secure, but it would have to do. The guard made no comment, stepping aside to allow Jaime out into the corridor. He had no escort beyond the single guard, which struck Jaime as curious. Perhaps Cersei believed he was too injured to pose a threat, or perhaps she had grown weary of stationing multiple men around him. They walked a twisting path through the keep, corridors that Jaime knew intimately, though it felt like years had passed since he last traversed them. Every once in a while, he spotted the flicker of a golden cloak or the black and gold of the Golden Company. The tension in the castle was still palpable, no idle chatter, no bustling courtiers. Everyone seemed to speak in hushed tones as though fearful of being overheard. A swirl of cold air greeted them as they stepped into a courtyard en route to the audience chamber. Jaime glimpsed the sky overhead, bleak and gray, promising yet more winter's chill. He wondered if the city would see heavier snowfall before the end. King's Landing was not accustomed to real winter, and already the city's resources were strained. He remembered too well what had happened the last time the population ran low on bread, riots, blood in the streets, and tyranny. He suspected it could be worse now if Daenerys Targaryen pressed a siege. At last, they reached the doors of a smaller council hall adjacent to the throne room. The guard knocked once, then pushed them open. Jaime stepped inside to find Cersei seated at the head of a long oaken table with Qyburn to her right. A smattering of Lannister captains stood along one side, along with a few men in the Golden Company's colors. Ser Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, loomed in a corner. His silent presence was as threatening as any spoken warning. Cersei regarded Jaime with an unreadable expression. She wore a gown of deep wine-red velvet, her golden crown glittering in the torchlight. The lines of strain around her eyes remained, but she held herself with cold composure. "Leave us," she said suddenly, flicking her fingers at the captains and Sel's words. "All but Qyburn. Go." A moment of uncertainty rippled through the room, but the men obeyed. The Mountain hesitated, massive head tilting questioningly. Cersei nodded at him. "You too," she added. "Stand outside." Ser Gregor lumbered out with heavy footfalls, and Jaime's guard followed him. The door closed with a soft thud, leaving Jaime alone with Cersei and Qyburn. The flicker of torches on the walls cast dancing shadows, illuminating the scarred tabletop. For a tense moment, no one spoke. Cersei's gaze swept from the fresh bandage peeking above Jaime's breastplate to his gaunt face. "You look half dead," she said, her voice low. "Is that Euron's doing?" Jaime chose not to dignify Euron's name with a response. Instead, he asked, "Why have you summoned me alone?" She exhaled a slow breath. "Because I want answers without the eyes and ears of half the Red Keep." Euron, she paused as though struggling with the memory. "He was an uncouth lout and unpredictable ally. And he is dead by your hand. Now I must salvage what remains of the Iron Fleet, if that's even possible." Her gaze hardened. "But that is not the only crisis, is it?" Jaime suspected she referred to Daenerys Targaryen's approach. Or perhaps some new twist. He said nothing, letting her guide the conversation. Qyburn cleared his throat softly. "Your Grace," the spymaster said, "reports indicate the Targaryen forces have begun their southward march in earnest. The Unsullied, the Dothraki, and the northern armies that survived the battle against the dead. They may be joined by Yara Greyjoy's ships. If so, the Iron Fleet, such as it is, would be hard-pressed to hold Blackwater Bay." Cersei pressed her lips together. "I have no illusions that we can stand against dragons on open water, especially with Euron gone. He was arrogant, but at least he was a skilled captain." She turned to Jaime. "Tell me what you know of this army. You fought beside them, did you not?" Jaime inclined his head. "Yes, though I left before they set off south. Daenerys still has a dragon, too, if the rumors are false that one perished. Her army is exhausted but not broken. They've lost many men to the dead, but the survivors are hardened. Winterfell stood, thanks in part to the dragons and to the Stark's defenses. Now that the dead are vanquished, Daenerys can refocus on her claim to the Iron Throne." Cersei's expression tightened, a faint tremor in her jaw. "So they will come here, seeking to dethrone me." She glanced at Qyburn, then back at Jaime. "What do you suggest I do?" The question took Jaime aback. For a moment, he wondered if this was a trick. Cersei rarely asked for advice so plainly. Yet her tone contained genuine desperation. He inhaled slowly, aware that each word could be a step toward redemption or condemnation. "Negotiate," he said at last. "Parley with Daenerys. Offer terms. You cannot defeat her in a pitched battle, not with the city so fragile and winter upon us." Cersei's eyes flashed with anger. "Then the need to the Dragon Queen? You would have me surrender?" Jaime shook his head. "No, not surrender. But broker a truce. Avoid a siege that will starve half the city. The realm has endured too much war already. If you present yourself as a monarch willing to spare innocent lives, Daenerys might relent. She wants to rule, not slaughter." Cersei snorted in derision. She roasted the Tarleys alive. She let her dragons burn countless wagons in the Reach. Now you claim she wants to spare innocents. She made mistakes, Jaime acknowledged. But I believe she was driven by vengeance against those who refused to yield. If you negotiate from a position of reason, appealing to her better nature, you might avoid further bloodshed. Qyburn rubbed his hands together, glancing at Cersei. "Your Grace, if I may, a negotiated settlement might buy us time. Even if your ultimate intention differs, you could at least keep Daenerys outside the gates, distracting her while we fortify the city." Cersei's gaze snapped to him, icy. "You suggest I lie about my intentions? That would hardly be new, Your Grace," Qyburn said with a faint smile. "But perhaps it's wise to consider every angle." Jaime felt a stab of foreboding. If Cersei feigned truce only to unleash wildfire, tens of thousands could die. He spoke quickly. "If you make a false show of peace and then betray her, you risk horrifying every lord in Westeros. The realm might rise against you for such treachery. This isn't a war in some distant land, this is our home. You have to understand what's at stake." She eyed him, her expression wavering between scorn and something else he could not place. "You speak of consequences. You, who killed the king you had sworn to protect. Jaime stiffened. I did kill Ares. To save King's Landing from wildfire, remember? He would have burned this city to ash. His voice caught. I will not see it happen again. For a long moment, Cersei said nothing. Then she waved a dismissive hand. We shall see if it comes to that. But for now, Qyburn, you will open channels to the Targaryen forces. Request a meeting of envoys under truce. I will decide my next move once we have more information. Qyburn bowed. As you command, your grace. He turned for the door, but paused. And Ser Jaime? Shall I leave him in the Tower of the Hand? Cersei's gaze flicked to Jaime, and something about her posture softened, though it was a subtle shift. He can remain in the tower under guard. Let him roam the keep if he wishes, but only under escort. She leveled her stare at Jaime. Do not try to slip away or engage in any treachery, brother, or I will have you clapped in irons. Is that clear? Jaime nodded, relief mingling with resignation. Yes. Thank you. Go, she said, turning her attention back to Qyburn. We have much to prepare. Jaime took that as his cue to leave. Outside the door, he found Ser Gregor stationed with silent menace along with a pair of guards. One guard gestured for Jaime to follow, making it clear he was not free to roam alone. Jaime swallowed a bitter taste in his mouth. He had wanted some measure of freedom. At least this was better than a cell. They led him out into the courtyard again, where the morning light had brightened. The air felt cold against his cheeks. Soldiers bustled about, many wearing the black-gold colors of the Golden Company, though a fair number of Lannister troops were present as well. He even glimpsed a few scowling Ironborn, presumably those who had not sailed away. If any recognized Jaime, they spat curses under their breath but did not approach. As he crossed the yard, he saw Ser Kennos waiting near a stable archway, flanked by two of Jaime's loyal knights. Kennos's face lit with relief as Jaime came into view, though the presence of the guards kept him from rushing forward. My lord, Kennos said quietly when Jaime was close. Are you well? We heard nothing all morning. Well enough, Jaime replied. The queen has decided not to lock me in the black cells. For now, I remain in the Tower of the Hand, under watch. Kennos cast a wary glance at the guards. That is better than we feared. What of Euron's men? Some of them linger still, loitering in the city's dockyards. We fear they may try to strike at you. I'll keep my eyes open, Jaime said. His side still throbbed, but he squared his shoulders. We must be cautious. For now, do not provoke them. Kennos nodded. And what does the queen plan to do with us? Jaime felt the weariness in every bone. I'm uncertain. She's preoccupied with the approach of Daenerys Targaryen's army. There may be attempts at a parley. He did not say more, wary of who might overhear. Stay alert. Let's see if we can find somewhere quiet to talk. One of the guards, a lean man with a wiry mustache, cleared his throat. Ser Jaime, your presence is requested back in the tower. The queen's orders are for you to remain under guard, not roam freely. Jaime forced a thin smile. Of course. He turned to Kennos. Come with me if you wish. Your knights can remain outside. Kennos nodded, and after a moment's hesitation, the guards allowed Kennos to accompany them. They retraced their path across the courtyard, then climbed a winding staircase that led into the Tower of the Hand's upper floors. The tower felt like a relic, with half the windows shuttered. Dust drifted in the gloom. In better times, this place had housed influential courtiers, even the Hand himself. Now it seemed forgotten, overshadowed by Cersei's preference to rule from the main keep. At the tower suite, Jaime entered, letting out a low breath. Kennos followed, and the guards took positions outside. The door closed with a final thump, though Jaime heard the scrape of a bolt. They were being locked in again. The suite was at least furnished with a table, 2 chairs, and a half-stocked bookshelf. A modest sideboard held a pitcher of water and some stale bread. The single window overlooked the Red Keep's outer walls and a slice of the city beyond. Jaime walked to the window and peered down, scanning the rooftops. Patches of white frost clung here and there, and a pale sun glimmered over the muddled sprawl of King's Landing. Kennos cleared his throat. My lord, if I may ask, did you speak to the queen about your reasons for killing Euron? Does she recognize you did it for her sake? Jaime turned, rubbing the back of his neck with his good hand. She did not seem inclined to thank me. Her view is that I robbed her of a powerful asset. She also questions my loyalty. He sighed. Cersei is suspicious of everyone now. She thinks only of how to maintain the throne, no matter the cost. Kenos frowned. Then do you truly believe she will negotiate with Daenerys? Jaime thought of Qyburn's serpentine whisper, how he had hinted at deception. He shook his head. She might attempt it, but I cannot be sure she'll keep her word. She might see it as a chance to lure Daenerys close, then spring a trap. And you? Kenos asked quietly. Where do you stand? Jaime hesitated. I stand for the city. For the people who will burn if another Mad King or Mad Queen decides to unleash fire. I have no love for Daenerys, nor do I hate her. But I cannot watch thousands die for the sake of Cersei's pride. He sank onto a chair, pressing a hand to his aching side. My hope is that I can persuade her to see reason. If not, he trailed off. Kenos studied him with concern. If not, you may have to do what you did before. Stop her from burning the city if she tries. The statement hung in the air like a drawn blade. Jaime closed his eyes for a moment. He had once killed a monarch to save King's Landing. Would he do it again if it came to that? The thought weighed on him like a chain around his neck. Yet he recalled the terror he had felt when Ares threatened to ignite the wildfire caches. The city had been a spark away from annihilation. If Cersei tried something similar, if she indeed had stores of wildfire left. He opened his eyes, meeting Kenos's gaze. I pray it never comes to that. They spoke in hushed tones for a time, discussing the condition of Jaime's men. Apparently, the Queen's guards had let them keep their arms but kept them restricted to certain sections of the keep. The Golden Company patrolled the walls, watchful for any sign of Targaryen outriders. The tension in the city rose by the hour, with food prices soaring and rumors spreading. The mood was a powder keg needing only a single spark to ignite chaos. Eventually, Kenos left the tower under guard to see about securing fresh bandages and possibly some better provisions. Jaime was left alone again. He paced, wincing at the ache in his torso. The day stretched on, punctuated only by the occasional shout from outside or the shuffle of boots in the hallway. He tried to read from one of the old books but found his thoughts drifting to what might happen if Daenerys' army arrived tomorrow or the day after. Would Cersei open the gates under a flag of truce? Or would she order archers to rain arrows on the Targaryen envoys? When evening came, a servant brought a tray with a meager meal stew that was more watery broth than meat and a heel of bread. Jaime ate mechanically, ignoring the bland taste. His appetite was poor, but he forced himself to take sustenance for the sake of his healing wounds. Afterward, in the dim lamplight, he lay on the bed, trying not to dwell on the swirling uncertainties. Sleep eventually claimed him, dark and fitful. He awoke to pounding on the door. Dawn light seeped through the window. Jaime sat up, startled, as Kenos burst in, breathless. One guard hovered behind him, face grim. My lord, Kenos said quickly, Daenerys Targaryen's forces are near the city. Cersei has called for a parley at the main gate. She wants you there. Jaime rose, heart hammering. When? Immediately. Word has spread through the keep. The queen intends to meet Daenerys' envoys outside the walls under a formal truce. Kenos glanced at the guard uncertainly. We're to escort you. Jaime tightened the strap of his breastplate, his mind racing. Cersei was actually following through on a parley? She must believe she could sway Daenerys or glean vital information. Or else she had a hidden plan. Jaime prayed it was not something catastrophic. He motioned Kenos to lead the way. The guard escorted them downstairs and through the winding corridors, eventually emerging into the large outer courtyard where a mass of soldiers had gathered. Cersei was there, mounted on a black mare, clad in dark furs with gold clasps. The mountain loomed to her right, and behind them stretched a column of Lannister knights and Golden Company mercenaries, all arrayed in menacing formation. As Jaime approached, he saw that the portcullis of the city's main gate was raised, and beyond it, a wide avenue led toward the countryside. Ice-crusted muddy fields spread in the distance. The morning sky was overcast, casting a dull light on the scene. Farther out, Jaime thought he glimpsed silhouettes of an approaching host, banners of the Stark dire wolf and the Targaryen dragon fluttering in the wind. Cersei turned at his arrival, her features drawn taut. You're here. Good. She raised a hand, signaling for the gates to be opened fully. Right at my side, Jaime. Let Daenerys see that you stand with me. A flicker of contradiction stirred in him, but he had no choice. He inclined his head. As you will. They set out, the massive gates rumbling as they passed beneath. A cavalry contingent followed, along with a squad of crossbowmen on foot. Jaime surveyed the archers with unease. Cersei insisted this was a parley, but why bring crossbows unless she intended intimidation or worse? Once they cleared the outer walls, the muddy plain stretched ahead. A thin coating of frost crunched beneath the horse's hooves. The cold wind stung Jaime's cheeks. He squinted against it, scanning the horizon. A small group of riders approached from the other side, banners snapping. As they drew nearer, he could see the silver-haired figure at the head, Daenerys Targaryen herself, astride a white horse. Beside her rode Ser Davos Seaworth, if Jaime's eyes did not deceive him, and also Tyrion Lannister. Jaime's heart lurched at the sight of Tyrion. He had not seen his brother since their bitter parting, when Jaime freed Tyrion from a dungeon. So much had happened since then. Tyrion had thrown in his lot with Daenerys. Jaime had parted ways with both his siblings in different ways. Now they converged on the field outside King's Landing under a flag of truce. Jaime felt a sudden swirl of emotions: regret, relief, uncertainty. Daenerys was clad in a heavy cloak of white fur, her posture regal. Her expression was guarded as she brought her horse to a halt some 20 paces from Cersei's entourage. Behind her, rows of Unsullied and Northmen stood in formation, though it was only a fraction of her overall force. The tension in the cold air crackled like distant lightning. Cersei reined her mare, raising her chin defiantly. A standard-bearer behind her hoisted the Lannister lion banner. The small group on Daenerys' side did the same with the Targaryen sigil. For a moment, no one spoke, each side measuring the other. Then Tyrion rode forward a few steps, hands visible, showing he was unarmed. "Queen Cersei," he called in a clear voice, "we come under a flag of truce to hear your terms and to offer our own. May we speak peacefully?" Cersei's jaw tightened. She nodded curtly. "We may speak," she replied, "but do not mistake our willingness to talk for weakness." Tyrion gave a slight bow. He turned and gestured to Daenerys, who guided her horse up beside him. She surveyed Cersei with cool composure, then shifted her gaze to Jaime. For an instant, something akin to curiosity crossed her face. Likely she wondered at his presence after he had once pledged to help fight the dead. Daenerys spoke, her voice crisp. "You have lost your ally Euron Greyjoy, by all accounts. Your forces are diminished. I offer you a chance to avoid further bloodshed. Surrender the throne and I will spare the city." A ripple of anger went through the Lannister ranks. Cersei let out a sharp laugh. "You're generous indeed, demanding that I hand over my birthright. How gracious of you not to burn my people alive the way you did on the Rose Road, or incinerate them in their castles. Perhaps you've learned that mercy wins fewer enemies." Jaime tensed, glancing at Tyrion. His brother's face remained schooled in neutrality, though a flicker of tension tugged at his mouth. Daenerys, for her part, did not rise to the bait. "I have learned that conquest without justice is hollow," she said. "I have no desire to see the innocent suffer. But the realm cannot abide 2 queens. The Iron Throne is mine by right. My father built this dynasty." Cersei sneered. "Your father was mad, and your claim to the throne rests on the same delusions. The realm does not want another Targaryen tyrant, especially not one who allies with Dothraki savages and northern traitors." A stir ran through the men behind Daenerys. Jaime saw Ser Davos set his jaw. Tyrion raised a hand to still any retort. "We did not come here to trade insults," he said, his tone measured. "The army of the dead has been defeated, but the realm is in ruins. Our forces are battered, your city is on the brink of starvation. All we want is to avoid more senseless killing." Cersei's eyes flicked to Jaime, then back to Tyrion. "My realm is not so fragile as you imagine. And we have resources of our own." "Resources like wildfire?" Tyrion asked softly, though his voice carried across the frosty air. "Will you burn the city as your father tried to do?" A murmur spread through both sides. Jaime felt a cold stab of alarm. Daenerys' gaze sharpened, and even Cersei looked momentarily caught off guard by the directness of Tyrion's question. "Careful," Cersei hissed. "You accuse me of planning the same madness your father unleashed. Perhaps it is you who inherited his appetite for destruction." Tyrion's face hardened. "I have inherited nothing from my father but a name I loathe. And Daenerys is not the Mad King. She saved the North from an undead army. She wants to rebuild, not incinerate. If you truly wish to protect the people of King's Landing, you'll see reason." Cersei's gaze flicked to Daenerys with contempt. "See reason? When the so-called queen has demanded unconditional surrender. If she truly wishes peace, let her withdraw her armies and leave me to govern what is mine." Daenerys opened her mouth to reply, but Tyrion spoke first, turning to his queen. "Your Grace, might I offer an alternative path?" He then addressed Cersei. "You hold King's Landing and the seat of power. We have the stronger army. Rather than a bloody siege, we propose a compromise. You formally recognize Daenerys' claim to the throne, but in exchange, she grants you a governorship, some measure of authority over certain crownlands territories. so long as you pledge fealty. Jaime studied Cersei's face. He saw the flicker of fury, the refusal to yield. She was a woman who would not kneel to any living soul. The notion of being a governor under Targaryen rule would gall her more than death. He feared this was going nowhere, yet he dared not speak aloud, not in front of both armies. Cersei glared at Tyrion as though he were vermin. I see now how little you understand me. I will never become a petty lord beneath a foreign queen's yoke. A tense silence stretched. On Daenerys' side, a few mounted knights shifted uneasily. Jaime noted the presence of Grey Worm, the unsullied commander, standing like a statue. Ser Davos looked pained. The swirling wind carried the tang of wood smoke from the city behind them. Tyrion sighed. Then what do you suggest, Your Grace? Another war, another wave of bodies? The realm can ill afford this. Cersei's lips twisted. If you truly desire peace, withdraw. Let me reign. If my people wish to accept a Targaryen, they can appeal to me. But I will not slink away in shame because you show me a sharpened sword. Daenerys glanced at Tyrion, frustration simmering in her eyes. We offered you a chance to keep your head. If you insist on clinging to that throne, you will lose it in fire and blood. Jaime felt the air thicken with menace. He could almost taste the metallic tang of conflict. Cersei's rage was like a coiled viper, poised to strike. In an instant, everything could dissolve into violence. He urged his horse a step forward, placing himself slightly in front of Cersei. Enough, he said, his voice carrying desperation. There must be another way. Both of you, think of the people who will suffer. Cersei's eyes flashed. Who are you to speak for me, brother? You claim to care for the people, yet you cut down my ally. Daenerys' gaze flicked to Jaime. Is he your ally, then? Or your prisoner? She asked Cersei pointedly. Before Cersei could reply, Tyrion's voice emerged again, carefully pitched. I propose a temporary ceasefire. Let us both stand down for a fortnight while we attempt to refine terms. Perhaps we can find common ground away from the tension of a battlefield. During that time, no hostilities from either side. The city remains open, trade continues, and no new forces approach from either direction. A negotiation within the walls, perhaps with neutral mediators. Ser Davos can fetch representatives from the Vale or from the Riverlands to witness the talks. Daenerys glanced at Tyrion and gave a curt nod. I agree to a fortnight's truce, but no longer. If after 2 weeks we cannot reach a resolution, I will take what is mine. Cersei's lips parted, and Jaime braced for her to reject the idea outright. But she surprised him by letting out a derisive laugh. A fortnight? You think me so naive? Very well. I will grant a mere fortnight if only to show that I am not the warmonger you claim. But do not think I will be idle in that time or that I will yield an inch. Tyrion exhaled, relief momentarily flickering in his eyes. Then we have an accord of sorts. 2 weeks with no bloodshed. We can arrange a neutral meeting place. Cersei cut him off. I'll send word of where and when, Lannister. Do not presume to dictate every detail. Her gaze darted to Daenerys. You speak of saving the people, yet you brought Dothraki hordes to Westeros, sowing terror. Control your savages, or this truce is broken. Daenerys' face darkened, but she only said, we shall abide by the truce, provided you do the same. She glanced at Jaime once more, a question in her eyes. Then she turned her horse, beckoning Tyrion and the others. We'll await your summons, Cersei. The tension remained taut as both sides began to withdraw. Jaime felt his pulse thrumming. This was a fragile peace, 2 weeks of uneasy calm. As Daenerys' party rode off, Tyrion gave Jaime a long, searching look, though there was no chance to speak. Jaime wished he could call out to him, say something to convey regret or longing for simpler days, but the moment slipped away. Tyrion was gone, galloping alongside the Dragon Queen. Cersei pivoted her mare, face pale with anger. She spat on the ground. We'll see how much use this truce truly is. Back to the city. Their column wheeled around, heading back toward the gates, the crossbowmen falling in behind. Jaime rode in silence beside Cersei, ignoring the throbbing in his side. The parley had ended in a tenuous agreement. In the best scenario, it bought them time to find a path that did not involve mass slaughter. In the worst scenario, it gave Cersei the opportunity to prepare a deadly betrayal. They passed beneath the walls again, the gates groaning shut behind them. The courtyard bustled with soldiers and small folk who had gathered anxiously to watch. Cersei dismounted, handing her reins to a stable boy. Jaime followed suit, mindful of every pang in his shoulder. As she strode into the keep, he hurried to match her pace. "Are you truly going to negotiate in good faith?" he murmured, voice low enough that only she could hear. She cast him a sidelong glance. "I will do what benefits House Lannister. If that means playing along with their illusions of peace for 2 weeks, so be it." Jaime's chest tightened. "Please, if you plan to use wildfire or any such atrocity, you know how it ends. You've seen what becomes of rulers who burn their own cities." She stopped abruptly, rounding on him. Her eyes blazed. "I am not my father, nor am I Aerys Targaryen. Do not presume to lecture me, Kingslayer." He met her gaze, refusing to flinch. "I would rather you hate me for warning you than watch you destroy yourself. I lost my hand to protect you. Do not force me to lose what remains of my soul." For an instant, her face contorted with conflicting emotions, anger, perhaps a flicker of sorrow. Then she spun away, continuing into the keep. Jaime followed in her wake, uncertain if his words had reached her or only stoked her fury. Over the next few days, King's Landing settled into an uneasy lull. News of the truce spread, and the populace dared to hope that war might be averted. The markets reopened with a surge of activity, though prices remained high. Refugees trickled out of the city, heading for the countryside in the belief it might be safer there if a siege came. Jaime spent his time in the Tower of the Hand, occasionally venturing out with guards to check on his knights. He saw no sign of open rebellion from the Ironborn, though they remained sullen. The Golden Company patrolled restlessly, uncertain if their pay would continue if no fighting broke out. Rumors abounded. Some claimed Daenerys had flown her dragons to Dragonstone, others that she had only one dragon left. None could confirm it. One afternoon, Jaime was summoned to a gathering in the throne room. He arrived to find Cersei seated on the Iron Throne, with Qyburn at her side and a contingent of highborn lords arrayed before her. Most were Crownland's lords who had sided with her out of necessity. She was in the midst of explaining her plan for a conference with Daenerys' envoys to be held in 2 days' time in the Dragon Pit. Jaime's heart lurched at the mention of the Dragon Pit, a place haunted by Targaryen history, once the stable for dragons, now a ruin on the Hill of Rhaenys. "And you shall attend as well, Jaime," Cersei said, her voice echoing in the vaulted chamber. "As my brother and as a sworn knight of the crown, you will stand at my side." Jaime bowed stiffly. "As you command." She dismissed the assembly shortly thereafter, leaving Jaime to wonder if the Dragon Pit had been chosen specifically as a site for intimidation or for some hidden scheme. He did not relish the thought of venturing into those ruins for a tense negotiation, but he had no say in the matter. 2 days later, the sun rose bright and cold over King's Landing. Jaime left the Tower of the Hand early, accompanied by Kenos and a small retinue of Lannister guards. They made their way through winding streets to the Hill of Rhaenys. The ancient stone structure of the Dragon Pit loomed like a broken shell atop the rise, its dome partially collapsed. Townhouses and smaller buildings sprawled around the base of the hill, many of them deserted in the recent upheaval. Cersei arrived with her own guard, including the Mountain and a few highborn supporters. Qyburn hovered nearby, wearing a cryptic smile. A handful of courtiers accompanied them, presumably to bear witness or lend their voices if needed. The Golden Company had positioned archers at vantage points on surrounding rooftops. Jaime felt a chill that had little to do with the weather. This was supposed to be a neutral parley, but the presence of so many armed men hinted otherwise. Shortly, Daenerys' party appeared from the opposite side of the hill. Jaime recognized the array of faces, Tyrion in the lead, Ser Davos, Grey Worm, and a contingent of Northmen that included Brienne of Tarth. Jaime's heart jumped at the sight of Brienne. He had not seen her since their parting at Winterfell. She wore plain armor, her broad shoulders set with quiet resolve. Their eyes met for a moment. He thought he saw relief flicker in her gaze, though she did not smile. Daenerys herself walked in front, dressed in a dark cloak lined with white fur. No dragon soared overhead, though rumors said one remained, possibly perched near the city, waiting for a call. The tension in the chilly air was palpable as both sides approached the central clearing of the Dragon Pit. Broken columns jutted around them, relics of a bygone age. They formed 2 lines, facing each other. Tyrion and Qyburn exchanged stiff bows, then ushered their respective monarchs forward. Cersei stepped into the open space, the mountain looming behind her. Daenerys did likewise, flanked by Grey Worm and Ser Davos. "We are here," Daenerys said, voice echoing in the ruins, "to discuss a lasting peace for Westeros." Cersei inclined her head. "A laudable goal if you do not demand my crown." A faint curve touched Daenerys' lips. "We shall see what can be agreed upon." She turned her head slightly. Tyrion, proceed. Tyrion stepped forward, surveying the surroundings. We have 2 days remaining of the truce. Her Grace, Daenerys Targaryen, proposes that we extend it indefinitely while negotiations continue to avert bloodshed. In exchange, the crown may retain nominal governance in King's Landing, but Daenerys will assume the official title of Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. You, Cersei Lannister, would swear an oath of fealty. In return, you will be confirmed as Warden of the South with the right to collect taxes and maintain your armies under certain conditions. A hush fell. Jaime observed Cersei's reaction. Her face tightened at the notion of bending the knee, yet the promise of retaining real power might tempt her. Before she could reply, Qyburn spoke. In addition, Qyburn said the crown requests certain guarantees, namely that the Targaryen armies Dothraki, Unsullied, and Northmen will not quarter themselves in the city proper, and that the crown shall maintain independent control of its internal administration, including the city watch and the port authorities. The presence of your foreign forces must be limited so as not to incite unrest. Daenerys paused, eyes narrowing slightly. I am not inclined to leave the city watch and port authorities solely in the hands of a rival. My men must have some oversight. Cersei seized on that. Rival? You speak of peace, yet label me an enemy. How can I trust that you will not use your armies to snuff out my rule the moment we sign any accord? Daenerys' chin lifted. Tyrion, show them the document we drafted. Tyrion produced a scroll, unrolling it to reveal meticulously inked clauses. We propose a council of regents, half appointed by Queen Daenerys, half by Queen Cersei. They will oversee all major decisions until the realm stabilizes. Each side can veto any extreme measures, preventing either from unilaterally raising new armies or imposing harsh taxes. He looked pointedly at Qyburn. This arrangement ensures power is shared, not seized outright. Cersei's lips parted, but she did not immediately speak. An uneasy quiet filled the dragon pit. The swirl of dust motes in the cold sunshine gave the ancient ruin a ghostly quality. Jaime caught Brienne's gaze again, a silent question there. Is this real? Could it work? Before Cersei could deliver her verdict, the mountain suddenly stiffened, helm turning toward a side entrance to the dragon pit. All eyes followed his gaze. A lone figure stood in a shadowed archway, garbed in worn leathers and furs. Jaime's breath caught. The newcomer's hair was matted, face drawn with fatigue, but it was unmistakably Arya Stark. Arya strode forward, ignoring the hush that fell. Her steps echoed on the stones. Grey Worm and Ser Davos tensed, but did not stop her. Cersei's eyes narrowed suspiciously while Tyrion looked on in confusion. Jaime remembered the rumors that Arya had become a fearsome assassin, that she held no fear of royalty or lords. He felt a twinge of dread. Daenerys spoke first, voice cautious. Lady Arya, why have you come here unannounced? Arya's cold gray eyes flicked to Daenerys, then to Cersei. I came to see if the Lannisters intend to keep any promise they make, or if this is another ploy to kill Starks and Targaryens. She cast a withering glance at Cersei. We Starks have learned to be wary of Lannister words. Cersei's face twisted in anger. You appear in the middle of our negotiations without invitation. Where's your sense of decorum? Arya shrugged. Decorum? My father lost his head to your lies. My mother and brother were slaughtered at the Twins, thanks to your father's scheming. Forgive me if I lack reverence for your courtly manners. The tension soared. Jaime shifted, fear building that this confrontation would derail the fragile talks. Tyrion stepped forward, holding up his hands. Lady Arya, I understand your anger, but we are trying to broker peace. This is neither the time nor place for vengeance. She glanced at him. Spoken like a Lannister. Always trying to talk your way out. Brienne, who had been silent, finally found her voice. Arya, she said gently, I understand your pain, but we must be careful. Thousands of lives hang in the balance. A single rash act could doom the realm. Arya's stern face softened a fraction at Brienne's plea, but her gaze returned to Cersei with lethal focus. If I thought killing you now would save lives, I might do it. But I know that would only unleash chaos. So I'll stand aside and let this farce continue. She stepped back, though her posture remained tense as a coiled spring. Cersei glared at her. How generous of you. Tyrion blew out a breath, evidently relieved that violence had not erupted. As I was saying, he continued, trying to restore the conversation, these provisions are intended to protect all parties. If you sign, Your Grace, you gain a measure of security and retain substantial influence. Queen Daenerys avoids a costly siege and solidifies her claim with minimal bloodshed. Cersei let out a long sigh. And if I refuse? You burn the city. We all die. Is that it? Daenerys hesitated. I do not wish to burn the city. Cersei seized on the hesitation, a cunning glint in her eye. But you might if cornered. This shared council is a farce. You would simply outvote me once you place your own puppets in half the seats. That is why each side has veto power, Tyrion emphasized. No measure can pass without both queens' consent. Jaime felt a flutter of cautious hope. Perhaps Cersei would see reason, realize this was the best deal she could get. He stole a glance at her face, searching for signs of hesitation. She stared at the scroll, lips taut. Then, just as she opened her mouth to speak, Qyburn placed a hand on her arm. "Your Grace," Qyburn murmured, "may I have a moment to confer with you privately?" Cersei nodded. "Yes." She turned to Daenerys and Tyrion. "We shall take a brief recess to consider your terms." Daenerys dipped her head. "Of course." Cersei gestured for Jaime to follow, along with the mountain and a small cluster of guards. They moved off toward an alcove in the ruined structure, out of earshot of Daenerys' contingent. Once there, Qyburn leaned close to Cersei and spoke in hushed tones. Jaime could not catch every word, but fragments reached him. "Puh. Cybele advantage if we stall. The caches remain intact if it comes to that. Loyalty of the Golden Company is assured as long as the gold flows." Jaime's blood chilled. He could guess at Qyburn's meaning. Stalling negotiations gave them time to prepare a hidden strategy, possibly involving wildfire or some other monstrous weapon. He stepped closer. "Cersei, you cannot be serious about unleashing wildfire again. Didn't we nearly lose everything to that madness once before?" She fixed him with a cold stare. "I do not need a lecture. I'll do whatever is necessary to protect my throne. If that means scaring Daenerys into compliance, so be it." "Scaring her is one thing," Jaime said, voice ragged with urgency. "Burning the city is another. Please don't forget what's at stake." She did not reply. Instead, she and Qyburn shared a look of grim purpose. Then she turned back toward the main group, her face a perfected mask. "All right," Cersei called as they rejoined Daenerys and the others in the clearing. "We have considered your offer." She let the pause linger as if savoring her power. Jaime held his breath. "I will agree to the principle of a shared council with veto power. But certain details must be amended. I demand that your foreign armies remain outside the city limits entirely. The city watch shall remain solely under my command. If I see any sign of the Unsullied or Dothraki crossing into the walls, the deal is void." Daenerys pressed her lips together. "That may be difficult. My men will fear treachery if they are not allowed to safeguard my presence within the city." Cersei shrugged. "Take it or leave it, Targaryen. I have no desire to be surrounded by savages who might slit my throat." A hush fell. Tyrion exchanged a glance with Daenerys, silently conferring. After a moment, the Dragon Queen spoke, her tone reluctant. "I will agree to keep my armies at a distance, though I must have a personal guard of my choosing within the walls. A small group only for my protection." Cersei tilted her head. "The size of that group will be determined by me." Daenerys stiffened, but Tyrion touched her arm, murmuring something. She exhaled. "Very well." A tiny smile curved Cersei's lips. Jaime watched her carefully, suspecting she believed she had gained the upper hand. Qyburn stepped forward to finalize the terms, dictating them to a scribe who scribbled furiously on a fresh parchment. Tyrion added stipulations regarding the shared council's composition. Daenerys insisted that certain seats go to representatives of the North and the Vale, ensuring they had a voice. Cersei retorted that she refused to seat House Tyrell's heirs or any Dornish upstarts. The negotiations wore on until at last a preliminary agreement was hammered out. Both queens would sign, with their sworn vassals and advisors as witnesses. The tension in the dragon pit eased slightly, though Arya stood at the fringe, glowering as if waiting for a sign of betrayal. Brienne watched with guarded optimism, and Ser Davos looked quietly relieved. A table was brought forth, placed on a flat section of stone. The scribe laid the parchment upon it, smoothing the surface. Daenerys stepped up first, picking up a quill to sign her name with a swift flourish. She handed the quill to Cersei, who studied the parchment as though it might be laced with poison. Finally, Cersei pressed the quill to the parchment. The scratch of pen on paper seemed to echo in the hush. She signed, then straightened. "It is done," she announced. "A truce leading to a permanent arrangement. Let all here witness." A moment of stunned silence, then Tyrion released a breath he seemed to have been holding. "Then let us hope this truly ends our wars," he said. Jaime felt an overwhelming wave of relief, mingled with deep suspicion. He saw the glitter in Cersei's eyes. She was plotting something, even now. But at least this moment might stave off immediate violence. Perhaps if the city had time to calm, if the armies withdrew, if negotiations continued, the worst could be averted. Everyone began to disperse, chatting in subdued tones. Arya cast a final glare at Cersei before stalking away. Brienne hesitated as though wanting to speak to Jaime, but a swirl of Northmen pulled her aside. Tyrion stepped close to Jaime, ignoring the looks from Lannister guards. "You're alive," Tyrion said quietly, searching Jaime's face. "I wondered after you left Winterfell. And then we heard rumors you killed Euron. You never failed to surprise." Jaime offered a small, rueful smile. "Likewise, little brother. You've managed to bring the Dragon Queen here to negotiate peace. Never thought I'd see the day." Tyrion's gaze flicked towards Cersei, who was speaking in low tones to Qyburn. "Let's hope she keeps her word. She's broken promises before." He lowered his voice further. "Watch her, Jaime. If she tries something catastrophic." "I know," Jaime said softly. "I won't let her burn the city." Tyrion nodded, then stepped back, turning to follow Daenerys' retinue. Jaime was left amidst the swirl of departing soldiers. Cersei brushed by him, her posture regal, the mountain trailing in her shadow like a hulking specter. Jaime studied her expression for any hint of sincerity about the agreement. Her lips curved in a brittle smile as if she sensed his scrutiny. Soon, the Lannister party descended the hill, returning to King's Landing. Behind them, Daenerys' forces pulled back, presumably to camp a safe distance from the city walls. That night, a rare hush fell over the capital, no open battles, no immediate threats. The city's inhabitants waited, anxious to see if peace might actually bloom from these uneasy talks. Yet Jaime's sleep was restless, his dreams haunted by wildfire explosions and the screams of innocence. He feared that a single spark could still send all of Westeros into another inferno, and Cersei's cunning might yet prove more dangerous than any direct assault. Euron Greyjoy's death had removed one wild card from the deck, but many more remained, any of which could unravel the fragile truce. As dawn crept over the rooftops, Jaime rose from his bed in the Tower of the Hand, resolved to do whatever he must to keep the city from following the Mad King's fate. He had killed once to save King's Landing. If he had to, he would do it again. But he clung to a sliver of hope that perhaps this time, words would triumph where steel had so often failed.